Regent Hall made 2 requests in early March. A request to meet with the Kroll investigators to make further inquiries, and a request for documents compiled by Kroll in the investigation of the UT Austin admissions process. Chancellor McRaven and I reviewed the requests and had concerns that we discussed with Regent Hall. Among the concerns was the lack of specific information from Regent Hall concerning his need for the documents requested. Our concerns remained after the discussion with Regent Hall. Regent's rules require that a board meeting be convened to consider this matter. The rules also provide that for the purposes of a board vote on such a matter, the vote of any 2 regents in support of the request is sufficient to direct that the request be filled without delay. The process for addressing the request to speak with the Kroll investigators presents a matter of first impression that I do not believe is clearly handled under our rules, and seems to be best resolved by trying to understand why Regent Hall wishes to speak to them. If Regent Hall has concerns about operations, accountability, compliance, or the need for further investigation, our rules require that he bring those concerns to the Chancellor, Chairman, the Board, or an appropriate committee of the Board. If Regent Hall is seeking the identity of individuals mentioned in the Kroll Report, I do not understand what the legitimate purpose would be of that request. Vice Chancellor and General Counsel Sharphorn advises that the contract with Kroll has ended, and he recommends an additional contract would be needed to grant Regent Hall's request. Entering into a new contract with Kroll at this point is, in my view, a decision to be made with the involvement of the full board. Also, as in contrast to the request for data, the request to have access to the Kroll investigators does not fall under Regents Rule 801, and so in my view would require a majority vote of the board. Before I call on Regent Hall, let me ask Chancellor McRaven if he has comments. Chancellor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, as we had discussed before, as we discussed with Regent Hall, I'm just interested in understanding, what the need is, and in terms of the information from the Kroll Report, and if the need is a further inquiry into the results of the Kroll Report, then I do have some concern about that. My role as the CEO, as the Chancellor, I looked at the Kroll Report. Kroll took all of that information into consideration. I had the opportunity to adjudicate the report. I made my decision known to the board. And so, frankly, that information has been reviewed by Kroll, been provided to us in the form of a report. And so, as we look at potentially, reopening this by looking at the information further, to me, then it becomes an inquiry, and an inquiry is action, and action, again, becomes a requirement for the majority of the board to make that decision. So, again, but at the end of the day, I'm just interested to know what is the need for Regent Hall, and if the need seems appropriate and doesn't, cause us to have to relook the Kroll Report, then I'm happy to sit down with Regent Hall, and we can go over to the office, and I'll show them what we've got, and again, as long as the need is identified. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, did you copy that?
Yes, sorry. At Regent Hall, I'd like to give you an opportunity now to address the board.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you all very much for your time. Thank you for calling the meeting. I believe there's more than the one issue I thought we were going to have. It sounds like we have some interpretation of the Regents rules to discuss also. For the question of need, very small, short statement. Per the Kroll Report, the Board of Regents has the responsibility to provide the policy direction for each institution under its management and control. In addition, the Board of Regents has the express duty to set campus admission standards. As the Board of Regents has never taken a position or even publicly discussed our respective views on the implications of the Kroll Report, the matter remains, in my mind, an open source of confusion. It is, I believe, our duty to understand the totality of the problems and the pressures related to Austin admissions and to participate fully in the policy solutions with the goal to restore integrity and trust in these very important operations. It is not enough to depend solely on the coming recommendations of a panel of former Austin system leadership to do this for us. It is not only appropriate to delve for a deeper understanding of the admissions practices, it is an imperative. Our prospective students and their families deserve not only transparency in our admissions practices, but we as a board need to fully and completely understand the pressures and headwinds that are preventing us from making real progress on our challenges. I seek to inform myself, ask questions, and gain a more full understanding on these matters, and I believe reviewing the materials requested and a discussion with Kroll is necessary to fulfill my obligations to the people of Texas.
Okay, thank you, Regent Hall. Let me, before I move further, open it up to if there are questions or comments from other members of the board. We can open it up to them at this time.
Mr. Chairman, this is Regent Hicks. As I have told you before, I mean, I think this whole rule that we're meeting today under should be evaluated further. I mean, I think it's, I find it a little unsettling that if the recommendation of the Chancellor and the Chairman is one way, and that it only takes two people on the board to go a different direction. I think that needs to be thought through further. That's my own comment at this point.
Thank you, Vice Chairman.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
This is Regent Hall. I guess I do have a question because I'm looking at a copy of the rule and it states that in no event later than 21 days from the date of receipt of the request, we're supposed to, I guess, have it send it to the full board. It says in no event later. Are we in violation of that rule based on that?
Mr. Chairman, this is Francie Frederick. If I might answer that. The 21st day would have been March the 27th, and we actually were prepared to handle this matter on that day. Regent Hall actually asked or agreed to toll the 21 days until this meeting, so there is no violation.
Thank you, Francis. This is Alex Spanberg.
Alex.
I guess I don't really see this as a particularly close call. I'd be very, very reluctant, no matter which region was asking for any kind of information to be blocking any region, or for that matter, the chairman or the chancellor from obtaining any easily available information. It's relevant to this, particularly it's relevant to the decisions that we have ahead of us in our very next board meeting, in which we're going to ask to consider a new admissions policy. I was a little disappointed myself that we really didn't have an opportunity to ask any questions of Kroll directly, as opposed to, because it was an executive session, having to ask only legal questions of our lawyer. So with that context, it seems to me it's entirely appropriate and perhaps even should be encouraged for each of us. If we do have questions or concerns about the Kroll Report, about the material that we've already been obtained, as opposed to launching off on some new information, about which I would understand that should have a higher bar. I simply don't understand why there should be any issue with our attention to understand what has already been learned by Kroll.
I appreciate that, Alex. I think one of the issues is just simply kind of a chain of custody issue, the idea that we don't, these are confidential documents. It's very important to keep them close. And what the chancellor has offered is that if Regent Hall wants to come view those documents, that he will allow that. And honestly, frankly, if Regent Hall would agree to that, we wouldn't even need to take this to a vote, because the difference would be, as opposed to making copies of documents and providing those to Regent Hall, if he would agree to go view those documents at the chancellor's office, then we could avoid the vote part of this on this issue in the board meeting.
Chairman, sorry.
Yes.
This is Wallace. With apologies, if I'd been made that offer, I would have accepted that readily. I mean, I've agreed and come in many times and reviewed materials at the system and with council present, so that would be according to previous practices.
Okay. And Chancellor, did I characterize that correctly? Is that the offer that you
You did, Mr. Chairman. However, I would like to address something that Regent Cranberg raised, because I think, frankly, it's a bigger issue here. And, I mean, I need to understand what my role is as the CEO. The Kroll investigation came from the Chancellor's office. Kroll investigated the admissions process. We received a report from Kroll. I acted on that report under my full authority to do so. And to my way of thinking, that is closed. I'm establishing a blue ribbon panel, or I have established a blue ribbon panel. They're going to provide me some additional insights and recommendations, which I will in fact bring to the board, so we can make sure that the admissions process across the UT system is fair and transparent and consistent with what the board wants. But if the expectation is that every time I make a decision as the CEO and the Chancellor, that a single regent or a region or two can trump that decision, then frankly I need to rethink this relationship with the board, because that's not consistent with my understanding of my role as the CEO. Now, having said that, again, I'm more than happy to have Regent Hall come over and look at the material. That is a standing offer, and we'd be happy to have him do that. But Regent Cranberg has raised a bigger issue, and frankly, that issue concerns me.
Well, let's be clear about what issue I raised. I certainly am not interested in making a decision. What I felt is that we should be able to have the knowledge to be able to ask questions of the investigator, so because we're being asked to read, review, understand, and make and respond to the recommendations that we expect you to make at our next board meeting about the questions. And we wish to be able to vote about on those recommendations in an informed and intelligent fashion as possible. I'm not suggesting that we should be getting into the business of making recommendations, but ultimately you are going to be asking us for our vote.
But Regent Cranberg, these are Kroll-specific requests, which is reopening the Kroll investigation. Any way you look at it, this is delving back into the information that was available to Kroll, that was provided to me as the Chancellor. And therefore, to me, it appears that we are reopening an inquiry that, based on my recommendation to the Board of Regents, we closed. And so I understand the need to provide the Regents information in order for them to make the most informed decision as we go forward in the admissions process, and we can certainly do that. But any re-look into Kroll, to me, is reopening the investigation.
This is Wallace. Can I offer a specific that might be helpful? As we all know, the pressures on UT Austin admissions are going to continue to go up. This is a trend that's been in place for many years. It's one of my concerns. The bottlenecks that exist in our admissions with the specific pressure on the holistic component due to the increasing population of the state, due to the top 10% rule, and other issues is something that this board is going to have to struggle with, as are you.
I agree.
So one example of the question I have, and I'm I guess I'm afforded one of two options. Okay, either of which I fear would be characterized as starting my own investigation when really it's research, and education for me is the need. But you know, Kroll Report focused basically on 3 of the holds that were utilized by UT Austin. You know, that represented thousands of applicants over the years reviewed. What I didn't know, and I reread the report, is there are a number of holds in addition to those 3. I'm very curious. I mean, what percentage of the incoming full-time freshman class at UT Austin that is non-automatic admit in-state student is actually represented by those holds, by the totality of those holds? So I can either make a request to your office that UT Austin go gather this information, or I can ask Kroll and look at the documents and see what's there. I mean, that seems to be the shortest way to the answer. But that's not an investigation. I mean, these are important you know, facts that I feel like I need before I can ask good questions and give hopefully good advice and participate in the conversation. So I don't see it as a reopening of the Kroll Report at all. I'm not critical of the Kroll Report. I mean, I'm just trying to understand more about the issues, and so.
Well, and I think it's important to clarify that we have 2 separate issues here. One is your access to all of the data provided by Kroll and it's accumulated and assimilated by Kroll that's in the possession of the UT system. And I think we've worked out a way for you to do that. We can vote on it if you want, but the other, though, would be to re-engage Kroll because they're no longer our agent, they no longer work for us. And so that is something that the entire world would need to vote on. It would have to set aside money to pay for that. And that, I think that's a different discussion than having access to all this data. What you articulated is data that you're right, it is available, but I don't think it requires you going, us re-engaging Kroll and giving you access to the Kroll investigators in order to find those answers.
Could I ask the chairman, are you suggesting that we would need a contract simply to ask clarifying questions to Kroll or about their report, the questions that we were not able to ask in executive session because of the limitations on executive session?
I believe we would. I don't know, Dan, if you want to weigh in or Francie.
Well, there may be some questions that I'm able to answer related to the report, and I would be happy to do that. But to the extent that it would require an interview or sitting down and having a discussion with them and a fairly extensive or even moderate number of questions, I think we would have to re-engage them. We're no longer under contract with them.
And were we under contract when we facilitated Senator Taylor's question?
No, we were not. That was an unusual situation, as you probably know. It occurred 3 or 4 days after the contract had expired. My understanding there was some urgent need for Senator Taylor to speak with Kroll about a handful of questions that he had related to a nominating committee meeting that was being held literally hours later. The discussion with Kroll lasted less than 10 minutes, maybe only about 5 minutes. He had signed and agreed to a non-disclosure agreement, he and the staff. And like I said, he asked about 4 or 5 questions, which were, in my judgment, reasonably related to his role in the nominating committee.
And this is Ernie.
Yeah.
Has Kroll been asked whether or not they need an additional contract, or they would require additional money to have a short question and answer session with all?
We've discussed that, and they would expect there would be an additional contract.
So this is Wallace. So Kroll is unwilling to have a phone conversation members of the board without a new contract. I just want to make sure I understand that, because that would be, you know, in a service business, that seems like a reasonable expectation that they would have a follow-up with us. I just want to make sure that's their position, that they're not going to talk with me.
Well, let me be clear, sir. It's probably more my position than their position.
Okay, well, that's different.
Say that again, Dan, I missed that.
Mr. Pavich, what I said is it's probably more my position than Kroll's position that I think there ought to be a contract before we impose on them for any additional time.
So this is more a matter of contractual liability than.
Yeah, I don't think it will cost much money to engage them for however many extra hours it takes to permit the interview.
But
Well, yeah, pay it here. I'm just trying to put it in context with the contract. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're talking about not a lot of time here. Is it necessary to go through a formal contractual process for that?
Well, we didn't have to, it would not be a matter of you know, putting it out for bids.
If you could get closer to the mic, I'm sorry, I have an hour.
Yeah, no, I mean, it'd be a relatively simple matter in the sense that we wouldn't have to issue a request for bids or anything. We'd be simply extending the contract or adding an additional contract. My point is that I think that to do that would require a vote of the full board, or the chancellor would have to agree with it.
But if I can offer on top of that, again, if Regent Hall, back to your kind of first, your 2 points there. If you're looking for information, I have a vice chancellor that provides me information on a whole range of issues. So if you want to know the number of students that came in or that didn't come in, we can provide you that. By going back to Kroll, to me, we are reopening the inquiry. We are inquiring into an investigation, an inquiry that already occurred. Going back and talking to the Kroll reporters will not necessarily get you the information you're looking for. I can get you that information if there are specifics that are going to inform you to make a better judgment on admissions. But I don't, again, see a reason or a need, back to the information piece, if you'll explain to me the need, the final outcome of the information that we provide you and the purpose of that, then it can help tailor my response to you and what I can provide you. But for Regent Pavich and Regent Cranberg, again, my concern, the contract aside, I'm sure Dan and others could work out the contract. But to me, this is an issue of now we are going back to Kroll. We are now going to be in a position to kind of question the initial report that Kroll provided. That is not information necessarily that is going to get back, Regent Hall, to your point. If you just want to know information, I can get you information. If you want to know what people said during certain interviews and how that unfolded, well, then that's reopening the inquiry, and to me, that's action, and to me, that requires the full vote of, or the vote of the majority of the board.
This is Ernie again. As it relates to the documents that I guess Regent Hall is asking to review, I mean, is this a situation where after the review of the documents, maybe Regent Hall can decide whether or not he actually needs an interview with Kroll? I mean,
I don't know that you're addressing that question. In my opinion, where does it end? And frankly, based on experience, I don't think it ends anytime soon. The real question is, do we want to reopen discussions with Kroll? Or do we want to let the chancellor lead this process the way he's already started? And to me, it's very clear. Access to the data, I agree with the chancellor and with Regent Hall that can be provided. But reopening the investigation, asking more questions of the investigators, to me, I'm not in favor of going there.
Mr. Chairman, this is Hicks again, but one other observation. When the Kroll people did their investigating, I know when they called me, they went through a long litany of how the confidentiality of this interview was going to take place. And I'm not as worried about myself as some other employees that were interviewed in this process and promised confidentiality. So to me, it would be and just by somebody's interpretations of their comments in writing to be produced could be problematic. I do think Regent Hall is entitled to all the information that he wants to be able to make whatever decisions he's trying to make, but to reopen or re-engage with Kroll, to me, is not a good idea.
Okay, other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, this is David Beck. Again, Sarah and I are kind of new to this process, but in looking at the rules, it looks to me like the rules we're operating under, specifically referring to 5.4, sets forth the process where a member of the Board of Regents seeks information. But I notice in looking at these rules, and I'm not being hyper-technical here, there are repeated references to requests for information or data. The rules say nothing about meetings and say nothing about investigations by anybody. So if we're going to follow our rules, it sounds to me like a request by a regent for information or data is consistent with what our rules provide. But once you start going beyond that and start getting into meetings with third parties and investigations, you're stepping outside of our rules, at least as I'm interpreting them.
Mr. Chairman, this is Wallace again.
Go ahead, Wallace.
Yeah, there's a liberal use of the word investigation being thrown around here, and you know, any regent asking questions is not an investigation. The only action can be taken by the board, and that's always been the situation. You know, I have consistently brought any concerns I've had to former OGC Bergdorf, former Chancellor Cigaroa, Dan Sharphorn, and yourself, and the chairmans. So, you know, it is the process by which we learn, is asking questions and doing research. And to be asked in advance what I'm going to, what the specifics are of the purpose doesn't make any sense. I mean, I don't know what's there until I read it. And I guess I'm troubled by the idea that we would, you know, as the governing board, not be allowed the same courtesy as a member of the legislature. When we actually have the duty to oversee the admissions policies. I'm troubled by that. I've heard no good reason that why I'm not allowed to ask questions of Kroll. I mean,
well, in my opinion, we made a mistake, or somebody made a mistake, in allowing Senator Taylor to have access to Kroll. And I don't think that sets the standard for opening the floodgates and letting anybody else have access.
Well,
in answer to your other comment, I believe it is an investigation. And I think a lot of your inquiries amount to an investigation. And honestly, kind of an open-ended hunting expedition as opposed to investigation. And I think that's the reason Hall, that sometimes I push back, because I just worry about, I don't know what it is you're trying to accomplish here. And frankly, I don't want to open another can of worms. I do want you to have access to the data, and we're going to make sure that happens. But allowing a further investigation to take place, I don't believe is either covered in the rules, nor is it appropriate.
Well, it's not an investigation, and I would remind you that after Dan Sharphorn's review of admissions, I lobbied you quite strongly that there was obvious need to do more, and my request was rebuffed. I had no ability to do any further investigation. The only reason that investigation ensued after that was a whistleblower showed up in Chancellor Cigaroa's office. You know, the repeated pushback that I've received for simply wanting to review documents and to ask questions, I think is unprecedented. I mean, I think it makes it very difficult for this board to do its job as required under the law, and you know, I think this is further evidence of that, frankly. I don't know what we're afraid of.
Chairman Foster, this is Sarah Tucker. Can I ask?
Yes, yes, please.
I think Regent Cranberg said something really important earlier. I want to make sure it doesn't get lost as we're having this conversation on what constitutes an investigation versus our role to do our due diligence. Is there any reason to believe that the final report doesn't contain everything that we need to know? And there is a difference, I think, between clarifying questions on the final report and digging further. And so maybe that's, since we missed, David and I missed kind of the report out